DreamWorks might be known for talking animals, crude jokes, and fairy tales, but somehow, they've also created some of the coldest villains to ever terrorize television. From the literal manifestation of death in Puss in Boots, to a peacock so terrified of his own fate that he tries to rewrite it with cannon fire.
Firing! Keep firing!
DreamWorks has no shortage of antagonists, but not every villain is evil just for the thrill of it. In today's video, we will be going over every DreamWorks villain we couldn't help but feel bad for. And there's no way we'd be starting a video on villains we felt bad for without talking about Lord Farquaad from the Shrek franchise. Look, we're not saying Lord Farquaad was a good person, but can we talk about how this man's entire villain origin story is just being short? That's the whole thing. His dad literally abandoned him because he wasn't tall enough. Imagine being dumped in the woods as a baby because you didn't meet the height requirement. This man didn't even get to ride the roller coaster of life, and we mean that both literally and metaphorically. And then what does he do? He turns his story around by building an entire kingdom and establishing order for the people. Sure, he tortured a gingerbread man and banished fairy tale creatures, but compared to actual Disney villains who are out here trying to skin puppies, Farquaad's crimes are basically a misdemeanor. But here's the kicker. Farquaad was literally about to marry Fiona. He was minutes away from becoming king and finally proving everyone wrong. And then a dragon eats him. A dragon! At his own wedding. The man couldn't even get through his vows before becoming a medieval McNugget. And you know what the worst part is? Everyone laughed.
Go ahead, Shrek.
The movie played it for comedy as Shrek got the girl, the kingdom, and the happy ending, while Farquaad got digested. And I'm here thinking justice for short kings everywhere. Speaking of people who deserved better, before becoming a corporate villain, Fairy Godmother helped Cinderella get her happy ending. She was actually good at her job. Then she built an entire business around it. She was running a Fortune 500 company in medieval times while raising Prince Charming alone, as we never get to see his father. So she's a single mom building an empire and supporting her kids' dreams. And what does she want? For her son to be happy. She promised Charming he'd be king. And she didn't just make empty promises. She made deals with King Harold, set up the arrangement with Fiona, and planned everything perfectly. Sure, her methods were questionable, but in her mind, she was just doing what she'd always done, making happy endings happen. Then, some swamp ogre who eats garbage and makes earwax candles ruins everything. She had backup dancers, a whole musical number, and a corporate strategy that worked. She literally had the kingdom signed over. And then she got killed by her own magic, because a frog king had a last-second redemption moment. After decades of successfully running a magical empire, she got taken out by friendly fire. And her failure created an even more tragic story. From birth, Charming's mom told him he was special. She told him he'd be king, marry a princess, and live happily ever after. And why wouldn't he believe her? His mom was the fairy godmother who made Cinderella's dreams come true. So Charming was trained to be perfect with perfect hair, a perfect smile, and perfect manners. He learned everything a prince should know and became so stereotypically perfect, he was literally named Charming. That's not a name. It's a personality trait his mom turned into his identity. When he rode to rescue Fiona, he'd probably practiced his speech the whole ride, but she was already gone, rescued by an ogre who eats rats and has worse hygiene than a medieval peasant. Everything he'd trained for was stolen by someone who speed-ran the rescue. After his mother died, Charming worked at a dinner theater.
I shall slay the monster that guards you and then take my place as rightful king.
From being destined to rule to performing for scraps. When he finally snaps and organizes fairy tale villains into an army, you can't blame him. And how does he lose? to babies. Literal infants in diapers defeat him. His villain arc ended with defeat by things that can't control their bowel movements. He went from destined prince to theater reject to prisoner. And if you think mommy issues are bad, you'll love the next villain. Tai Lung from the Kung Fu Panda franchise was left on the Jade Palace doorstep as a cub, abandoned. And Master Shifu found him, took him in, and raised him as his own son.
Shifu found him as a cub, and he raised him as a son.
Tai Lung worshipped Shifu, and every move Shifu made, Tai Lung studied. He didn't want to make his dad proud, he wanted to be like his dad. But then Shifu started promising him he'd become the Dragon Warrior, that the Dragon Scroll would be his. So Tai Lung trained harder than anyone.
It was never enough for Tai Lung.
He mastered every technique and became literally unbeatable, all before he was fully grown, and he did it all for Shifu. Then came the ceremony, and as Tai Lung walked up to receive his destiny, Master Oogway said no, and everything came crashing down. Tai Lung looked at Shifu, and Shifu said nothing. He didn't even try to defend himself. So Tai Lung had a breakdown, and Shifu had him imprisoned for 20 years. 20 years chained up in the dark, alone, replaying that rejection. When he escaped and came back, he still called Shifu Master.
I have come home, Master.
This is no longer your home, and I am no longer your master.
Still wanted approval. After everything, he just wanted his dad to say he was enough. Then to make matters worse, Po stumbles along and gets crowned the Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung lost to someone who learned Kung Fu from being hungry. The man deserved therapy and a hug. Instead, he got sent to the spirit realm by a belly bounce. Continuing the trend of Kung Fu Panda villains, we have Lord Shen, who was born into everything. Royalty, wealth, loving parents, and a city that adored him. He was a brilliant inventor who turned fireworks into art. His parents were proud, and it looked like he had the perfect life. Then a soothsayer told him a prophecy of him being defeated by a warrior in black and white. And so Shen became obsessed. His perfect life became infected with paranoia. Shen decided it meant pandas, so he committed genocide. He killed every panda he could find, trying to prevent the prophecy. His parents were horrified and banished him. He went from beloved prince to exiled murderer, losing the family who loved him. Shen then spent years in exile building weapons and an army. Not because he was evil, but because he was terrified. When he returned to Gongmen City and took over, he still went to his parents' throne room, looking at where they used to sit.
My father's throne. He used to let me play here beside him, promising someday this throne would be mine.
Remembering what he'd lost. Then Po showed up. The one thing he thought he'd wiped out as the prophecy found him anyway. And in the end, Shen defeated himself. He cut the rope, holding his own cannon. The prophecy wasn't about being defeated in battle, but his own inability to let go. If he just ignored the prophecy, he'd still have everything. But fear turned him into the villain it predicted. He needed therapy for anxiety, not banishment. Instead, he got paranoia and a tower to the face. Next up, we have to talk about the boogeyman himself. But before Pitch became the Nightmare King, he was Cosmatus Pitchener, a legendary general in the Golden Age. He was a hero who had a daughter who loved him, and he fought to protect her and make the world better. But while guarding imprisoned creatures of pure fear, something went wrong. They escaped and infected him, consumed him, turned him into the thing he fought against. He became fear itself, as pitch black. The fearlings took away everything he loved as he went from hero to monster without choosing it. Now Pitch exists as the boogeyman, powered by children's fear.
So sweet, so full of hope, wonder. Why, there's only one thing missing. A touch of fear. that never gets old. Feel your fear, come on.
But fear is what parents actively try to eliminate. While guardians like Santa get belief, worship, and cookies, Pitch gets nightlights, and there's no such thing as monsters. His existence depends on the one thing everyone wants to destroy. When he finally makes his move, he's not trying to take over the world, but trying to be seen, to be acknowledged, and for his plan to work. Then, out of nowhere, he loses because one kid somewhere still believes in the Easter Bunny. Years of planning to finally achieve his goal, and it's all ruined as his own nightmares drag him back underground. Pitch is simply a sad hero who lost everything, and he spent centuries alone being told he doesn't matter. As sad as Pitch Black's story was, it's nothing compared to Chef from the Trolls franchise. The Bergens were creatures who couldn't experience happiness without eating trolls, and Chef was in charge of that duty. Her sole purpose in life was to help them experience the joy of eating their favorite delicacy. The Bergens loved her, and she was essential. But at Prince Gristle's first trollstice, the trolls escaped, making sure the future king never got his first taste of happiness.
I think I hear something.
Go! We got Poppy!
It wasn't Chef's fault they escaped, but since she was the royal chef, she was responsible. 20 years of loyal service got wiped away as she got banished. So she spent 20 years tracking them down, planning a comeback to restore happiness to Bergentown and get her life back. When she kidnaps them, she's not just being selfish, she wants her people to be happy again. And how does she die? She gets launched from a pot and eaten by a monster. She spent her whole life preparing food, and in the end, she became the meal. The irony is devastating, as all the chef needed was job security and a different career path. Next up, we have Drago Bloodfist, who was just a boy whose village was destroyed by dragons. His home, family, and neighbors burned as he watched everyone he loved die in dragon fire. To make matters worse, young Drago thought he could reason with them, but a dragon bit off his arm. That is PTSD-inducing trauma, and nobody helped, so his trauma became his identity. Before Hiccup started befriending dragons, they were terrorizing villages. Drago's conclusion was actually supported by evidence, so he built an army and got a bewilderbeast to control all the dragons. From his perspective, he was preventing other children from watching their families burn. Then Hiccup comes along and everyone expects him to just forget everything he had endured. All his trauma-driven planning was negated because someone tamed a dragon. The final nail in the coffin was watching Drago get carried off into the ocean by his own bewilderbeast to drown or freeze. A man shaped by childhood trauma is killed by his own dragon because a teenager had better taming skills. Drago needed grief counseling and PTSD treatment before he spent his life hating dragons. Instead, he got a missing arm, decades of revenge planning, and an icy death. Finally, we have Hook, who was once a respected pirate captain, just doing pirate stuff. Then he met a flying child named Peter Pan, who decided Hook was his nemesis. And what did Peter do? Cut off Hook's hand with a sword and fed it to a crocodile. Just straight up mutilated him and gave his severed hand to a reptile as a snack. Despite being portrayed as the big bad villain out to get some kids, Hook wasn't always the bad guy. In various versions, Hook is educated, cultured, and sophisticated. He plays piano, appreciates music, and has manners. He could have been anything, but his life is reduced to being the punching bag for an immortal child's amusement. Even in Shrek, Hook can't catch a break. He's at Farquaad's tournament and gets disqualified. He's working for Charming and loses to babies. His hand was eaten by a crocodile. He's constantly humiliated by a flying child, and nobody takes his suffering seriously. He's a mutilation victim who can't escape his abuser, and we can't help but feel bad for him. Even though these villains engage in diabolical schemes that end up hurting others, you can't help but feel a little sad for them once you realize that they've all experienced great suffering of their own. If you stuck around till the end of the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, or we'll make Pitch Black torment you forever.